But
case, I
let's
was
talk about the
hypocrite.
podcast a bit generally first too, and then we'll get
Sure.
into
Yeah, no, that's the thing. First of all, it was a hilarious podcast. The
that.
beginning was just amazing. The beginning was bloody fantastic. With the like, and as you said, I can't get it out of like so many animal allegories. Just why do you need so many like
He loves
everything with
animals.
this stuff? I know, and yeah, it was a very funny one. So as a piece of comedy, some parts of it was just too funny. We'll discuss that. But I think Peterson is definitely like he again. I don't know him as a person, but in his arguments, he's a hypocrite because he constantly complains about other people being ideological in the way they art can't be ideological. You should approach art apolitically, and I personally don't believe you can have such a thing. But and then he puts forward his own interpretations as if they're the most concrete and obvious, and that's what the author meant, and that's what the writing should mean to you, and all that. So that's the biggest problem I have with him. I mean, I checked out this video of him. He went on Dave Rubin. He says this is a specific quote. So, quote, the artist who subsumes the artistic vision to the ideological framework is putting the cart before the horse. It's actually a sin, I would say, ultimate creative sin. So that's what he says about, and I'm of the view you can never have a political work. Even a political work is in itself political in a sense
Mm-hmm.
that it is not taking side. So that's okay. You disagree, agree with me there. But I mean, you clearly have a framework. You have clearly defined your framework as some kind of Christianity. So you are not in a position uh, to make this criticism because you're not even claiming or adhering to some form of apoliticalness, even if that's possible,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's what pisses me off the most about him, I must say. And his idiotic use of analogies is it's
I
just the
get.
cherry on top.
I think what maybe pisses me off the most about, yeah, the animal stuff. I mean, it is crazy. So I mean, we'll get into the climate change stuff in a second. But what everybody in the media picked up.
Sorry, I cut you off.
No worries, no worries. So I think I was gonna say like what a few things that piss me off about him. And this is not, by the way, to completely like undermine everything that he's done or that he has no like expertise anywhere or no knowledge or so people wrote in our comment section that he's helped. How can we say bad stuff about him when he's helped tens of thousands of young men and stuff? I mean, I'm not sure
I
how they
need,
know, how they
by the
know,
way,
but
yeah, I
let's
need
take that.
references for that.
Let's say like sure. I mean, he people who bought his book, portion of the people who bought his self-help books, young men, those ones, they're really helped out by the Jordan Peterson book. If it weren't for his book, they wouldn't, or his advice, they would have had other issues. And sure, maybe that is for granted. And like you were saying at the end, I think when he was talking about psychology and all this, he's kind of
Clinical, so
clinical psychology. It kind of gives different impressions, the stuff that are saying, and that I have not much here. I don't really have any problems with what I heard there to come and point out. But I was telling you like everybody has not multiple personalities, but like multiple like identities, right? This is like very commonly talked about in social sciences. And you can just see them clearly. And there's this one identity of his, which is like this mainstream one, where he goes on podcasts and he talks about different topics that they're not the ones that he's an expert on. And these are the ones that I think have made him really popular, like talking about trans issues or other things, and a lot of them just have a lot of holes in them. And he does like two things. So we're talking about stuff that piss me off. One is like the non-stop animal analogies, like some are so relevant, like in the first 5 minutes of the podcast where he's talking about the
there's about
flaws of
six.
climate models, which we'll get into. He references this analogy about chickens. Do you remember what it was? He goes like straight away into chickens, and Joe Rogan's like, okay, that's fine for like chickens and stuff, but
I
what
don't remember
about
the chicken was.
in any case, I mean, I don't see. I wonder some of our viewers
No,
who
man,
really
it
like
is.
him, do they find all these animal analogies like relevant? I mean, he just loves them nonstop. And then the second thing is that this he's really a master at, and he throws this. And I think I have an example of this, which we'll get into with the deaths in nuclear compared to solar, which is, what did you call that? A shock jock or
Yeah, I think he's a shock jock.
yeah. So I mean,
Shock jock
by
was
that you
like the
mean like he'll,
radio.
yeah, what?
No, shock jock used to refer to radio, like DJs or comedians that try to basically shock you by what they say. It's so out of band, man. Oh my God, he said the F word, he said the C word,
Yeah.
and it's just, I don't like it, to be honest. It's not, I hate it in many ways. It's like it's the jump scare, jump scares in horror movies.
Okay.
Basically, boom,
Yeah.
that, like, it's that jump scare of comedies. It's the cheapest way, in my view, to try to get laughs. But I do feel like he's a shock jock. I mean, let me just read this. If I want to summary my view, it was unstructured musing of a frustrated hippie who has finally joined the cool kids. That's what it comes across. Like, he comes across both as a hippie, and he comes across as an incredibly tense and somewhat rigid individual. And yeah, the things he espouses, I mean, it was very interesting. You said we are different characters. That's very postmodern of you. Very, individual. We are
Different
not
identity.
individuals.
Yeah,
no, people, we present ourselves different in different situations. And as you say, with his case, it's very, I don't know, I think it is very obvious that he's playing a character, I think. I don't
or
know.
maybe just, I mean, one way that I understood the kind of shock jock reference is that, like, you'll be talking about a topic and like he'll throw a fact about a particular aspect of it that will, like, kind of get your attention, and it's cool and stuff, but it has
really, man?
really it's like parallel. It's not even parallel, it's like tangent to the issue. It's like a small part of it, but like he'll throw that, and he's so good at that, and you wouldn't realize, like, when they're talking about the nuclear stuff we'll get into, the
solar
nuclear
panel
and solar, he throws in this fact about that, which the media actually thought is wrong, but is actually true. We'll go through that. So what he says is true, but it's just irrelevant, but he's very skilled at it. So that made it all seem like, okay, solar power and all this climate change thing is all kind of bullshit. It's not talked about. Whereas he just gave a very, like, irrelevant fact on the side. So those are just some of his skills that I've kind of picked up on after listening to this 4 hours. And
no, I agree. But yeah, I must say that it was,
and
so...
Joe was on to him, no? And I mean, I've been telling
I think so,
this,
yeah.
because he fact checks him quickly in the beginning over the 7 million kids dying from internal, like, pollution. He other times
that's by the way,
frustrated.
The shock jockiness comes like, did you know 9 billion kids die every minute? Because of, I don't know, because
the 7 million kids
pollution.
die every year because of,
no, I know, exaggerate.
Yeah.
Did you know more people die from pedestrians have car accidents than car have car accidents? Yeah, what's like it's just I mean, I somewhat hate it because it reminds me of myself when I was like a teenager. When I was a teenager, I grew out of it, I stopped doing that. Like, it's a way to get attention. It's a way of, I guess, peacocking in a way, like, look at me.
And but Joe was fully onto him, right? Like, fact checking him. He was he wasn't like in awe of him, like I've seen him be
not at all.
with what's his name,
he laughed at
the
him
Tesla
twice.
guy. Yeah, he laughed like badly in his
openly.
face. At least.
But how can you not? Like, one of them, I laughed, like we talked about It's Always Sunny. I was laughing out loud. He talks, oh my God, the whole
Do you remember which one?
Inflation.
Oh,
the inflation and the grasshopper and the ant. So, you think ant is smart because he collects and saves his food for winter. But what if there is inflation? Then grasshopper, and if the grasshopper has invested in the subprime mortgage market, he has bought some options in the future. He has some options in future of the oil market, and he's beaten the inflation. So who's in charge? And I love it when Joe Rogan goes, inflation doesn't mean jack shit to ants. And oh my God, Peterson comes back. Well, ant colonies have wars,
Oh yeah, no, he always has.
What if there's didn't think of that, did
He's
you?
definitely in the wrong field. Forget about psychology, psychoanalysis, and all this. Go become who studies animals? Biologist? I don't know what's the exact
zoologist. I think
he loves animals and the animal kingdom. It's just
it was
amazing.
So good, man.
Birds. I love birds. One part he's saying something, he's like, even birds. This I'm like, what? Even birds? When did you establish something about birds that now you can suddenly come in with this even birds thing? Like, okay, birds do it. Must
okay, guys, we have to. Birds also shit while they fly. Should we go? I don't. It's so funny, man. It was so funny, and I don't know. I love his analogies, just like the mosquitoes investing in the, juice market. I don't know.
But okay, so let's get to the climate segment and then we'll come back. So the climate change one was crazy. It was in the beginning and it was quite strange. But Joe actually set him up because Joe himself started with a pretty weird actually, it's his word now that I'm using. So he says this: who believes in 10 years that Miami is going to be underwater? And it's a gross exaggeration. And the reality is that the world sort of always go through these cycles of change, but human beings are definitely having an effect on it. But a small effect compared to cows and other things. The climate change one is a weird one. So he actually introduced climate change, but Joe Rogan
said some people argue that. He didn't say I.
Yeah. No,
I know.
I was reading like his quote. That's exactly what he said.
Yeah.
His quote. But anyway, Joe Rogan's thing was a bit weird too, because but a small effect compared to cows and other things. But cows are also, the number of cows on this planet are also because of humans.
Cows got together. Let's go, guys. Let's what we should do? We should, excessive reproduction so we can sell our meats to humans. He's talking about, some people talk about cows as if they're just independent actors going around. Guys, let's set up shops near, which land is good? Brazil rainforest. Let's go there, cut some of the trees down.
And then he used the word climate change, the weird one. Anyway, so my whole point with that is that Joe Rogan introduced the climate change debate the climate change topic very on in the podcast. And so Jordan Peterson went on from there. So the first thing that he did was he brought up the margin of errors and the variables
that was amazing.
To dismiss all climate change studies, right? So I want to break this down.
All other studies. You can, based on that, you can basically, human experience is it was very clear.
That's my first point.
It was very clear.
Yeah, that's my first point. First, let's talk about the variable ones. So because that one's even simpler. It's but which variables do you use? You can put this variable, that variable. But that's an issue with every single field. The same thing can be said about your field, right? Which variables do you use? And you don't just pick any of them out of the blue. It's based on, hypothesis, past literature, past studies. He just shat all over all the sciences, which he's involved too with that statement. So I didn't get that. Then the margins are a bit more interesting. So the errors, are a bit more interesting. So we can get to that one right after. Yeah.
No, again, I think he's just figured out that's how.
But there's no way he didn't just figure it out. This guy has a PhD and a master's in a social science thing. The first thing that you hear in any social science classes and all that are these discussions about, models and the variables that we choose and the subjectivity and all this and which variables to choose and we should control for these variables. These are the first things that come out of all teachers, their mouths from what I've seen over the past 15 years or so that I, first went to university. So that's definitely not, making that seem like it's not something that is shared widely in universities or stuff. It's just, it's misleading. And I'm sure he knows the problem with which variables to choose, have control variables. Is this variable actually having the effect that you want? These are central to social sciences and all kinds of issues that they have with, producing positivist like kind of results.
Well, no, not even social sciences. We are talking about first of all climate change. So
Yeah.
it's the natural sciences. Even in natural sciences, man, they don't modeling, and again, it's just very reliability of a study is the ability to reproduce that study and get the same results, right? It doesn't mean you will get exactly the same results, and that's the whole point. Like, again, it's like obviously, the farther you go into the future, it becomes harder to predict things because variables increase and their effects on each other are unpredictable pretty much. So again, like, you're describing life, not even science. You're just describing like human, like, okay, if I want to go out, I have to guess that, the shops are open, but of course, again, you're just describing thinking.
It's funny
And
that you
of course
say
they're
that.
not gonna,
You're talking about thinking and life, because he quickly goes right away with saying, that's the problem with predicting the future and why humans can never like be certain of what they're going to do. So he brings it like completely out of the climate change discussion and brings it about like humans predicting the future and all this. But let's get into this. So this, he didn't mention it, but I looked into it and I'm pretty sure this is where it comes from. I mean, first, we all agree that climate change models are not 100% probably reliable. They probably all make some mistakes, but although the literature goes back, quite a while now, and they keep on always making new models and testing this model with these variables compared with another scientist's findings and all this. So we know. But he was saying something else, which is that he was saying that because there's like a margin of error, right? That margin of error just multiplies itself over time, right? To become like this insanely huge error, right? But I don't think that is actually true. Like, a margin of error remains and it might become bigger, but it doesn't exponentially just multiply. Like, just because your margin of error is like in 10 years time 3, it doesn't become 6 and then like 18 and then 36. It doesn't go up in that way, right? And I think what he is referring to is that this paper studied go ahead.
I have his exact quotes. Do you want me to read
that?
Yeah,
sure.
So another problem that bedevils climate modeling too, which is that as you stretch out the models across time, the errors increase radically. And so maybe you can predict out a week or 3 weeks or a month or a year, but the farther out you predict, the more your model is in error. And that's a huge problem when you're trying to model over 100 years, because the error compounds just like interest. So that's what I think.
Yeah, exactly. So my understanding is that, okay, all the way until the error compounds, that is where like he kind of starts, that's where I don't agree with him, right? Because sure, maybe the margin of error will be much more for something in the future, but not in this way that he's saying. And I believe he got this from Patrick Frank, who has a PhD, a member of the scientific staff of the Stanford synchrotron radiation, right? So he's a person who works at Stanford and he's a physician. And in 2019, he put out this study and he said that, because climate models have these kind of, things that you're uncertain of and all this, as you go over time, these just multiply itself. So he says when climate models actually find that, that in 50 years, the weather is going to be, let's say, plus 1.5 degrees warmer, plus or minus 0.3. No, that's bullshit. It's actually plus or minus 20 or plus or minus 25 degrees. So it's just so absolutely wrong, these models, right? These models are so absolutely wrong that they're useless. So here's a quote from that guy's study. Large but previously unrecognized uncertainties must therefore exist in all the past and present air temperature projections and advanced climate models. The unavoidable conclusion is that an anthropogenic air temperature signal cannot have been, nor presently can be, evidenced in climate observables. Right? So it's saying that the error becomes so much that these climate models are absolutely bullshit. I'm pretty sure Jordan Peterson got his argument exactly from this. And then pretty much if you go on the internet and if you look up this person's study called Propagation of Error and the Reliability of Global Air Temperature Projections. So I was listening to him. It's interesting. The guy, he did this on like his part-time, because this is not what he's hired to do. So he did this on his own time. And it took like 12 or 15 journals that didn't accept his paper. And he points out that the people doing the peer review, they weren't good and they didn't understand. So finally one journal accepted it, a good one to peer review and everything. So that's fine. But there are a lot of people after that, a lot of other scientists and stuff who dismiss what he's saying. And just one of the main claims that they have against it is like, why do you think that this mistake just compounds infinitely, like just like doubles, which is not true. And then they point out how models can show the past accurately, and of course they have mistakes. But yeah, this whole thing that the models become absolutely bullshit, I think he got it from this Patrick Frank in person.
I wouldn't be surprised, but again, you have to go case by case. What are you talking about? Maybe you're talking about, for example, I don't know, reduction of quality of soil. In that case, due to acidic rains. In that case, maybe they do compound because they're like, you have to go case by cases basis but just look at your weather app. Your weather app is, for example, it says it's going to be rainy today, like 60% chance of rain. It doesn't say 100% chance of rain. And usually when it says rainy, it's at least cloudy, like that's how, like, you can predict the future of. So of course, again, what are you talking about? Climate change as a whole, I'm sure, because climate change as a whole has so many variables going into it, modeling for it is extremely difficult and probably inaccurate in terms of like being 100% right. But I don't know about this guy's study. I don't know if he just looked at climate change.
He just looked at climate models. So it was saying that all climate models, they make this mistake.
Are wrong because.
So he completely like dismisses all climate models, right? And I'm pretty sure Jordan Peterson got this from this. And anyway, climate models, I believe, are just one way of studying, the impact of climate change. You look at historical records, you look at sea level rises, you look at glaciers melting. Anyway, but those
are all used to predict, like.
No, I mean, you can look at the
climate change.
Yeah, but I don't think all studies are climate model studies.
No, but even if you look at the past to argue something about climate change, you're talking like climate change is, I would say it's like, integral part of future. Like whenever you're talking about climate change, you're inherently talking about the future. So it's
not always though, not always looking. I agree that the models about the future are like a main important aspect of climate change studies.
No, but
I'm saying there's also
that is.
I mean, they look at like sea level rise, how like over the past 10, 20 years and before that. Or they also look at compared to the past. So I'm saying I don't think it's always just looking into the future predicting temperature change in the future.
No, but why would they compare it to the past? Because they want to predict the trend for future.
Yeah, okay, fine, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, unless, like, everything to do with climate change is about predicting future, so.
Everything about climate change is about predicting. Yeah. But I think what I'm trying to say is that not all climate change studies are based on like model studies of how things are going to, what temperature is going to be like, or what the weather and climate is going to be like. That is all I was trying to say there.
No, fair enough.
But this was like the hardest kind of one to like unpack and go into. I think the other ones that he says are like much more clear cut and simple, and they go back to this kind of just throwing in random facts, right?
Shock jockiness.
Yeah, shock jocking. So in the media they covered what he said, right? He said more people die every year from solar energy than die from nuclear, right? This was like in this climate change topic, right? And everyone in the media kind of made fun of him and did the same thing as you did. But he is factually correct if you look at the number of deaths that happen like within the industry, right? And so nuclear is the least dangerous one. And solar energy is like, I'll put the graphs right now so people can see.
The most dangerous?
No,
I
no,
don't know.
no. It's like a little bit higher. And then, of course, the most dangerous is coal and then oil and
Oh,
natural
makes
gas,
sense.
which have a lot of other ones. So, and I was also looking at this, was for like people working in that sector. They were like, saying, so I got this from a brochure for like, people working in that sector. When calculated in relation to the amount of power each industry produces, it's more than 10 times more dangerous than nuclear power. As a result, there are believed to be around 100 to 150 deaths in the worldwide solar industry each year. So here, actually the media didn't do their job of actually going and really checking what he's saying, because what he said is factually true, but it's
Irrelevant. That's what it
irrelevant,
is.
right? It's irrelevant to climate change, and sure, like it's something that we should know, but it doesn't, it doesn't dismiss it. It doesn't really make solar power a better source of energy or a worse. It doesn't address any of its issues. And when it comes to nuclear, the conversation around nuclear was kind of like very like low level, because they were like, yeah, nuclear is really like the great best energy source out there, right? Why don't they do it more and stuff? And then Jordan Peterson was like, well, France is into it and stuff, but they don't mention the whole issue of nuclear is really, one is that it's super expensive, like, and when governments decide to like open a nuclear power plant, it can only happen in like 15 to 20 years into the future. They're very expensive setup. There's a problem of the radiation from like, because some of the parts after a while you have to bury them, and that's kind of these are the two main issues that you see nobody sorry.
Nuclear waste.
Yeah, nuclear waste, exactly. So they completely forget to mention these two things. Anyway, not a crime. And this is why you really see like most countries are not moving towards nuclear, because nobody from each side really wants it. I think it's hard to make money off because you need to do all these investments, and it comes with dangers. Otherwise, nuclear does have a lot of nuclear contributes less to greenhouse gas emissions than solar, apparently. Yeah, so I mean, in that sense, it's very good, but that's just one set of problems with it.
The main problem, it's all these, like, to be honest, if I do think Joe Rogan is right, though, that even if we go, like, there's not enough material in the world if we all want to live like Americans, in my view. If we make as many batteries, as many, what I mean? I don't know if there's enough material for us to live in that world. So I don't see that much. Like, it was just a completely irrelevant fact to the like energy crisis. It's not like people are dying because
energy
solar
topic
energy
exactly
pollutes it. It's just like they fell off a roof or something.
But what you mentioned goes to the heart of the third one that I have, and this one was the most absurd one. So this is a quote from him: "The fastest way to make the planet sustainably green and ecologically viable is to make poor people as rich as possible as fast as we possibly can." The thing about poor people is that they're not resource efficient. They use a lot of resources to produce very little outcome. So that's a problem. Now, I think this one is just factually wrong, no matter how you look at it. So the world's wealthiest, this is according to Oxfam and Stockholm Environment Institute. So maybe the numbers aren't good. But the world's wealthiest 10% were responsible for around half of global emissions in 2015.
How did they? I don't know.
The top 1% were responsible for 15% of emissions, nearly twice as much as the world's poorest 50%, who were responsible for just 7%. And you can also look by country, right? If you look at the top 10 countries, I have them right here, who emit the most emissions, right? The only country which is in third place, which is like, poor, and I guess would use these kind of resource inefficient ways that Peterson was referring to, is India, right? Otherwise, there's China, US, Russia, Japan, Germany, Korea, Iran, Canada, and all these countries are, of course, producing, emitting a lot of emissions, not because of things that they're doing in resource inefficient ways, right? It's because they're producing a lot and they're consuming a lot. So I did find that to be that was the funniest, craziest one, that poor people are responsible for more greenhouse gas emissions than rich people. I mean, has he even ever looked around, like, who buys stuff, who travels the most, who eats the most, who has bigger houses, who has bigger cars,
Look,
who has more cars, all of these things. So I don't know where he thought that makes sense. And this is the point where he quickly went to the whole indoor and like dangers of like, you know, burning
the
wood and stuff
gorilla.
indoor. No, burning stuff indoor and 7
Yes.
million kids dying from indoor
Oh yeah.
pollution per year.
No, I don't know. There are many ways to calculate this, and there's always talks that poorer people, because of the way they have to live. It's not like they choose,
And
motherfucker. I mean, that's the thing.
but
Like,
even
it's
the
not
way
like
that they
people are
have to
choosing
live, no,
to
but have
burn
to live,
coal.
right? A burning coal is done like in other places where people are also rich, not necessarily poor. But the whole thing that they burn wood and that the burning wood like makes up for all other kinds of emissions, like this you
Yeah,
can
exactly.
calculate. That is not true
I mean, okay,
in
yeah,
total for the
I,
amount that is
yeah.
consumed.
But it's just again, and oh yeah, the left is anti-growth. By the way, that's why I think, again, talking of Joe Rogan being onto him and stuff, like whatever Joe Rogan was talking about, he would kept bring lefties,
Yeah.
and Joe Rogan would ignore that. He kept bringing, oh, these lefties, they want to, I'm sorry, these lefties want to destroy us, they want to hurt you, they want to, and he's so emotional and about everything. And yeah, but sorry, the climate thing, it's just, yeah, exactly. He just knows a couple of shitty facts that he's learned to,
But I,
argue arguments. I
but
don't
I
think
feel
he
like he
really
would
knows
know
them.
more than this. Like, I mean, I couldn't believe the
He did
resource
read
one
200
really,
books. He did
man.
read 200 books on the oceanic stuff. And it's funny, whenever he's actually, I think, knows about something, like whenever he actually looks into something, then he is very reasonable. Like, oh no, in the oceans, I actually looked into it. There we have to like conserve and be clean and all that. So I'm sure if he's given a book and a couple of nice sentences and a nice animal analogy, he can be win over to the environmental cause. Like,
Man,
just tell him that
I would
gorillas
love to
and
know.
birds do it. Did you know birds recycle? Oh, really?
I
I
would
didn't.
love to know the truth when it comes to 200 books. Like, come on, Jordan,
Yeah,
just say the
that's.
truth. What do you
Oh,
mean? Did you
even if you
literally?
have, even if you have read 200 books, it's such a. Come on, you don't say that. Yeah, I did extensive research. I mean, oh my God, the part. Sorry, I'm getting on
No,
a
I'm done with
tangent.
the climate change stuff. So feel free to
Oh, you're
expand the
done. Oh,
conversation. Yeah.
yeah, the part where he goes on about, yes, how did you? Oh, how do we establish something is true if it happens independently in different parts of the world? And I established this form of psychological, sociological, biological assessment. I think he's talking about the Bible and with God being true or something. And it's just, you're 5 years old. This is an argument when I was 7. People were giving me that. How could, if God doesn't exist, how does it appear
Mm.
independently in different cultures?
Oh
First of all,
man.
because we are not that special, because most of us are idiots that have the same, we think we are special and different. We are not. Secondly, because they copied each other. They
Yeah.
clearly copied. They were like, oh, what is your story? Okay, I changed the main name of my character to a local name, and if there was no copyright laws, there was no people
And there
checking for
was
page.
migration and people moving and traveling 2,000 years
Yeah.
ago, based on what
People,
I've heard.
they were nomadic tribes, pastoral living.
Yeah.
And yeah, this idiot,
No,
again,
but the
I'm
religion
getting
stuff,
personal.
hold
I
on,
shouldn't.
hold on. Religion stuff, I want to give a disclaimer and then ask you a
The
few
Bible
questions,
is the
right?
truth.
So I completely zoned out on the religious stuff because, okay, he's not going to convince me with that based on like God being real and all that, right? But like, I know that some people have like serious theology conversations where they go over like the literature and within their framework of like this happened to that. So within that world, they actually talk about, okay, this was written first and that one was written first. So within that kind of paradigm, right? And I don't know anything about that paradigm, so I completely ignored it. But what was that story that he was saying that like he kind of like just found out or something? Like he was a story that he told Joe that this is going to be like the most interesting thing you've
Oh
ever
man, that
heard.
was
And
awesome.
I don't think it passed Joe Rogan at all, because Joe Rogan
No,
got into a back and forth with him over something
what?
like not related
Why is
exactly
this?
to what he was
Okay,
saying.
it's a Moses story about the fact that Moses, there's these snakes that are bothering people, so people are like, Moses, what are you good for? You suck as a prophet. Snakes are bothering us. So he goes and he has talk, because Moses is the only of the Abrahamic prophets that has conversations with God. Like,
Okay.
you know,
Okay. See, I
Moses,
didn't know this thing. You know, it's like I couldn't
man,
follow. So now I'm like, you know, I'm putting myself within
Moses.
this paradigm, within this
Yeah,
framework.
God. Look,
Okay.
God is a bit of an introvert, and he like when it comes to most prophets, he usually sends Gabriel because you know he doesn't want to directly. But with Moses, he was very close, and they had direct Skype calls and all that. He would, the MacBook of the time was a bush, so he would appear. He appeared to him, and he told him to take this steak and put it in front of the people, and he turns into a snake, but it doesn't bite them or some bullshit like that. And Jordan Peterson obviously says that this is a story about facing your fears, but it was so funny because he was like, it is so fascinating. It is such amazing story that it must be either
Yeah.
completely mad or true.
What?
And then what's his name? Jordan. Why would you think that? It's not that crazy of a story, even like compared to the
Yeah.
other shit.
I mean, I didn't even get it. I was like, what did I miss? I guess I'm not listening closely enough.
No, it was hard to get. Because that's another trick. He uses big words and
Oh,
he
I
looks
mean,
into the
kudos.
abyss when he's talking. He looks into and oh my God, this is a story.
No, he's clearly a clever guy in many ways, but
he reminds me of a passion, like people in passion plays. I remember as a kid seeing both people who watch passion plays. You see them suddenly cry their eyes out, and then as soon as the passion plays, okay, where are the biscuits? Where is the biscuit and tea? Where is it? Oh, Javad, how you doing? Is everything good? How's the bazaar going? Like, can you go from that level of
yeah.
sadness that you're like crying and hitting yourself to that? And by the way, the people who did the preaching or did the passion play also were like, they do this type of getting emotional
Yeah.
and talking about the stories as if, oh my God. And I just loved Joe Rogan this episode. He was like, all right, well, okay, thank you. Yeah, great.
No.
Well done.
Yeah. I would really like to
Anyway.
they definitely approached Joe Rogan and not the other way around. Joe Rogan like didn't book him. I'm sure they approached. He just didn't seem like, he was like too into loving it too much. But maybe I'm just misreading and projecting, kind of. So who knows?
But I did love I must say, I loved not love. One of the comments that we got, negative comments, that it's like the criticisms you make sort of maybe ranks of jealousy, or it's kind of out of jealousy. And after this episode, I am fully admitting I am super jealous of this man. I mean, he gets to hang out with Matthew McConaughey and Guy Ritchie. I mean, my whole world is being destroyed. I found out Dave Rubin is friends with Bob Saget. Jordan Peterson is friends with Guy Ritchie. So I don't get it, and I am. I do
sold those barbecues for Guy Ritchie. I mean, I want one. I think Joe Rogan was sold. I think Guy Ritchie's website probably crashed.
What was so special about the?
It's pretty much a Korean barbecue, but he sold it to people, and barbecues are really fun. So I mean, thereafter, I agree with Jordan Peterson, but nothing. It's just like a gigantic, expensive $60,000 huge picnic table with the barbecue right in the middle of it. So it's a Korean barbecue. I mean, you know what Korean barbecue? You go to Korean barbecue restaurants. There's a barbecue in the middle of the restaurant, not middle of the restaurant, in the middle of your table, and you cook.
I've seen
so this looks like you do this at home, in your backyard.
Do you talk about me, or please don't, if you do, you talk about your friends to other friends? Damn, what a smart guy. He's a genius and very good sense of humor. Fantastic sense of humor. Like, okay, calm the fuck down. First of all, you don't need to become so intense. Did you know? And secondly, like, does anybody talk about, like, I usually refer to as a asshole, to be honest, if I'm talking about, I'm joking. But, it's just who talks about their friends like that? Very, very astute
Oh yeah.
At
Yeah.
comedy. What a comedy talking Douglas Murray. Douglas Murray has Tom. Anyway, it's just you should see Douglas Murray. He has comedy timing. Yeah.
Oh my God. But okay, I have two comments here left. One is
I have a
this.
lot of comments.
Okay. Let me actually finish one about climate change. I forgot,
Go
which is
ahead.
that climate scientists and anybody who cares about climate change, they should really be thankful to Joe Rogan, because I feel like he put climate change on the map this week. Like, all these scientists came out to, put out tweets about climate change, and the media actually cared about it. So they should be thankful. And Joe Rogan said that, I think he said he's reading some kind of climate change book for a guest that he's gonna have. So he might have a climate scientist. So that's good. And a related point is that you were making this point, of the value of this kind of content. Jordan Peterson makes me Google stuff like crazy. So maybe that's not everyone's like reaction, but I'm just like Googling. I'm like, what? Shit. Okay, this one is actually true. But then I'm like, well, what did this have to do with anything? And then like, oh,
exactly.
And some stuff you learn more,
that's how he wins,
about the climate modeling and stuff. Learned a bit about that.
That's how he wins. I think wins the audience over, because whenever you focus on his framework of thinking, he moves on to a specific example. Whenever you go to that specific example, he moves back up to the holistic structural view. So you don't, he's never caught. Yeah, he's very, very.
No.
But just
I
just like to some of the things he said. I hope people hearing it from me, maybe they're not, because I think maybe the way he says it, but listen to this. Hobbit, this is about The Hobbit, the book by J.R.R. Tolkien. It introduces shamanic level religious preconceptions back into popular culture. The definition of religious experience, that it was attractive enough that everyone read it. What the fuck? But I mean, I'm sorry.
I don't know. Am I supposed to understand this? Maybe I don't. Maybe
look, JR, there is a.
What is he trying to say there?
He's trying to say that art can be a religious experience, and through art we can have collective unconscious. And The Hobbit was a very good example, because it was a story that the guy went and took the ring, and it's one of the oldest stories. And it's a good example. It's one of the fundamental stories of our lives, and because it introduces shamanic level religious preconceptions, this is the part where he talks about 25,000 years we can draw our civil. I mean, what the fuck are you talking about? Like when they talk about civilizations, Joe Rogan is, I think, talking about America, maybe the West. He's talking about humanity as a whole. But you could argue The Hobbit again had religious motives and all that. J.R.R. Tolkien became religious towards the end of his life, but that's not why it's popular. Or and then he talks about when The Hobbit comes back, they share everything with the community. When did that happen? From what I recall, he hoarded his gold and all that. So I didn't even give it to Frodo, from what I recall. And then look, by the way, when I was saying that, look, I'm rude to his arguments, but look at what he says. For example, then he's comparing Hobbit to something else. It's opposite of dropping out. Timothy Leary let politics, his uninformed political misconceptions, contaminate the sacredness of his experience. He wraps the entire culture in doing so. So this is where the part they're talking about psychedelics, and he goes on. By the way, you can tell it's oh man, Joe, wait till they open their eyes to psychedelics. Oh, Joe, wait for them to open their eyes. They will see. By the way, besides Joe being onto him, why was he sucking up to Joe Rogan so much? I don't suck up to my boss this much. You know what I mean? Do you am I crazy?
No, not on that level.
Joe, come here. Come here, what you do here, man? You're so brave. Every week you put yourself. Just keep doing what you're doing.
The poor guy did cry twice, but not gonna make
fun of it. I mean, I wouldn't have made fun of it if it didn't seem like
Yeah.
It's either a show or he needs help. Like I don't. But sorry.
What
And
else do you have?
the artist. Oh yeah, listen to this. The artist who subsumes. Oh no, I did read that. Oh, he says that when people criticize you, you become a shell and then you go to a corner. So it seems to him, if people criticize you, you either become a shell or you become an asshole. There is no middle ground.
Oh, I
You
didn't
can't
pick on
just
that. I didn't hear that one.
yeah, you can't just take in some criticisms like and go, oh, maybe I can work on myself and make myself better. No, I have to blame myself so much that I become a shell, or I become like, I don't have white guilt, I don't have this guilt, I don't have that guilt. Not that, by the way, I don't think anybody's guilty for the crimes of their fathers, but he's just so he's so dismissive of the arguments and all that. And in the end, I'm sorry, but I've had a lot of experience with psychiatry. The way they talk about Xanax, it's as if it's heroin. I don't understand why Joe Rogan, who's doing DMTs and all kinds of drugs, Xanax is basically a sleeping pill. It's not a huge.
Yeah, that part I don't know. I mean, I know that all these pills, you can also get addicted to them, and
Of
they can
course,
be overprescribed and all this. But
alcohol.
yeah,
No, it was very surprising to me. Joe Rogan, as somebody who's like,
but
pro
that's different. It's
legalization.
non-pharmaceutical, though. It's different, and he would say those drugs are much more dangerous and all this. Joe Rogan said some weird stuff about psychedelics too that I didn't pick up, but I've written down
about
one.
Dawkins. That was about Dawkins
Yeah.
that didn't have experience, so he can't talk about, because there's a video of Jordan Peterson where he says that the two snakes that go, the old Sumerian thing, he says that may have been shamans or whatever. They saw it in a psychedelic dream and it was a representation of DNA, and Dawkins made fun of him, or scolded him over it. So
yeah, but Joe Rogan was very defensive of that. He was like, and it's because he hasn't done it, and if he does the drugs now, he'll see. And it's not because now you know what DNA looks like, so you'll get like, or at least you have representations of it, so that's why that's what you're going to see. He got like very like serious and like pissed off there.
He was like, because Richard Dawkins has an experience that he can't really make a claim because you see weird things. But okay, you see weird things, you might even see a helix shaped thing when you're tripping. That doesn't mean that you had a vision of a DNA. And everything is possible, but there is a like, as everything is possible, what some things are far more likely. Is it more likely you hallucinated, or is it more likely that you went to, like, you managed to get a glimpse into a real metaphysical world? I mean, I found that part to be very annoying as well.
But Joe Rogan said the smartest thing I heard on the whole podcast with how Joe Rogan like summed up Twitter, and he was telling Jordan Peterson to but he said, well, he got that from C.K. Lewis, I believe. He said, one way to understand all these tweets and comments on Twitter, he's like, it's just talk. He was like, back then, wouldn't you and your friend just like, be like, isn't this celebrity such a piece of shit, or blah blah blah. It's just that now it's put in writing on Twitter, so you actually see it and it's there written in front of you. But it's just like talk, and it doesn't even mean that the person hates you that much or in that way. It's just how you talk about something that's pissed you off. So that was very insightful by Joe Rogan, or C.K. Lewis, I guess.
Very good point. I definitely agree. But overall, I must say, it was very educational, though. I'm gonna be.
And the last thing to mention, I wonder if any of those.
We forgot. No, gorillas, man. We have to talk about the gorillas and the cage.
What monkeys, they're monkeys.
Monkeys. How was that cage working? It was a cage, but it was a dome. It was so big that they didn't. And then oh my God, he was like,
but wait, set it up
monkeys
first.
Weren't stressed. So he has a friend who has a sort of a zoo. I don't know what the fuck. I don't understand. But he had monkeys somehow. I don't know. As an individual, he acquired monkeys, and he had a private zoo or something.
On like some Caribbean island. I can't remember where he said.
Oh, yeah, all right. I didn't know. I didn't hear that. But then Jordan Peterson was talking about like studies that were done by the monkeys, and then Joe Rogan was like, "How do we know those monkeys weren't stressed due to due to the fact that they're in captivity?" And then Peterson is like, "No, they weren't. They were very happy." And he was
No, he's like, no, they
happy
were
it was
free.
there.
They were like,
They were
so
free.
they weren't in a cage. He's like, no, they were in a cage.
It was a
It's
very
like
big
they weren't
cage,
free. It's a
yeah.
big cage.
It was like, how big? It was like very big. And then he was like, how do you know they didn't want to go? He said, they left the door open. What the hell is going on in there? Guys, if you want to go, I leave the door. Here are the keys. Take it. You know, this is the
But-
keys to the Land Rover. Go on, guys, if you want to take it for a ride.
Man, Jordan Peterson, who loves animals so much, he must have seen it that like there are some lions who like go in their cage and like come back out and they don't want to run away. I'm sure it's not because they wouldn't prefer being out free. It's just how they've been like brought up. They don't know where to go. It's like, no. I told the monkeys go, they didn't want to.
Look, like you can stay here rent free or go to Dubai and work your ass off, okay? Under my roof. No,
that was really funny.
I love his relationship with animals. I wish I had such an intense, like.
But I think the final one that I need to bring up, and maybe someone like Jack, if he's still listening, if he still managed to keep up with us, I doubt it. But any of the people who are, think that we're unfair towards Jordan Peterson, what's up with this obsession with hierarchy and him thinking that the left is obsessed with hierarchy? I mean, I've never heard bad faith, democracy now. Hierarchy. Yeah, anybody like Gray Zone, any left outlet or anyone talking about hierarchy that much, that he thinks that hierarchy is such a big concern of leftists and not anarchists, but of leftists. I don't know where he got that idea from. Maybe I'm mistaken, but he's obsessed with hierarchy, and he also thinks that the left is hates / is obsessed with hierarchy.
I'm going to defend him a little bit here. I always talked about the fact that left doesn't want to give power to anyone. Mm-hmm. And I think if we want to be very charitable, he's talking about the fact that since 1960s onwards, especially actually in the field of psychology, the people who were on the left become increasingly inward looking and anti, like having a, let's say, organization, anti-leaders, anti-stuff. So maybe being very charitable, he's referring to that. But again, it's not all of he talks about the left just like he talks about the Soviet Union, as if it's a monolith of just one guy, like one individual with one thoughts and one approach and all that. So I do think, I mean, I am being very, very charitable there to him.
Yeah, no, so, fair enough. That is true. That I agree. But it actually makes me think for a second. It's funny, like at the UN and stuff, they're very hierarchical. But actually, it's like a lot of like these new entrepreneur businesses and stuff where they try not to be hierarchical, like not too much. So they have open offices. Their org charts. They have like open office spaces and things like that. So but this hierarchy thing, and he's like, and the left hates hierarchy.
By the way, he was obsessed. He kept bringing I think I told you, he kept bringing the left on, and Joe Rogan was like, okay, man, let's talk about this. All right, whatever. I don't care about people. It was so. Oh man, but I would love to attend one of his lectures, and I would just like him to talk about the economy, because I'm sure it will be filled with, okay guys, now look, if the mosquito had invested in the futures of the oil market, he wouldn't have been in this place, he wouldn't have.